Can hear you.
Can you see me?
We can see you. Nice background.
Unfortunately. Are we public yet?
Okay, we're about to start.
Okay.
We're ready to go.
Yeah, I'm a little on the miserable side, guys, so bear with me.
Oh,
You've been down a lot.
I had surgery on Thursday or
Oh, okay.
Wednesday.
Oh,
It's been sticking with me.
oh, hope you're all right.
yeah.
Yeah, I am. I'm just miserable. I'll tell you about it later.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Madera County Board of Supervisors. Today is Tuesday, February 8th, 2022. Time is 9:01. We'll call this meeting to order. And first, are there any additions to the agenda?
There are no additions.
Thank you. And Council, will you please read the items into closed session?
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Two items on this morning's closed session. Item 2A is a pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. It's conference with labor negotiators. All employee organizations are up for discussion today, and the agency designated representatives are as listed on the agenda. Item 2B, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D1, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, and the case for discussion today is Ross versus the County of Madera.
Is there any public comment on any closed session items? Seeing no public, I'll call close to that and we'll go back for closed session.
Okay. Supervisor Wheeler,
I didn't hear nothing.
Supervisor Wheeler, it's a roll call.
Okay, here,
Supervisor Rogers,
Here?
Supervisor Poitras,
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez,
Here.
Chairman Frazier.
Here.
We're ready.
Anita, I'm going to ask you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, to a regular meeting of the Madera County Board of Supervisors. Again, today is February 8th, 2022. Time is 10:01. I'll call this to order, and we'll start with a roll call. We have some members on Webland.
Supervisor Wheeler,
here,
Supervisor Rogers,
Here?
Supervisor Poitras,
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez,
Here.
Chairman Frazier.
Here. And County Council, was there any reportable actions from closed session?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No action was taken in closed session this morning.
Great. And then, as always, we start the meeting with opening and closing in memory of. Is there anybody that has someone to open? And
I have one.
Okay.
Yeah, I have one.
Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, this is kind of, I mean, this is just so bad. Tanya Say got a hold of me this weekend and said that this gentleman, Mark Stone, he's worked for the county over 30 years, and he worked 20 years in social services and the last 10 years in her department, the IT department. He retired last Monday, the 31st, and he passed away over the weekend. Less than a week after retired. And I don't know, maybe we ought to write a letter to the family or something for all his work and stuff for the county. And it's just about as sad as I think you could get. So, Mark Stone, rest in peace.
Yeah,
It's very sad.
that's very sad.
I have one, Brett.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, I failed to mention this. She passed away a couple of weeks ago, about a week ago. It was Wilma Tajian. Many of you may remember Ed Tajian, who owned the dry cleaners, and that was years ago. But she was a wonderful person. Had lived in Madeira a long, long time. I know Rob knew her real well, and she was just a warm, wonderful person. She'll be missed.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any others here? I have one, if not. Wendy Monzo, also some of you may have known her as Wendy Beckett, passed away at the end of January. She was almost 43, very young teacher at Central Unified, grew up here in Madeira, and survived by her 2 young sons and her husband, and a lot of you know her parents, Georgia and Carlos Beckett. But just a wonderful family, wonderful woman, just very, very sad to have lost her, so full of life. And so just thoughts and prayers go out to the Beckett and Monzo families during this time. All right. And then we'll have the invocation by John Purcell of Believers Church. And then we have, luckily, to have our council member, Anita Evans, here. And if she would be willing to do the flag salute, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Supervisor Frazier. Let's all pray together. Heavenly Father, we come before you this morning with honor and praise for your sovereignty and your help in all the affairs of man. We pray, first of all, for these families that have lost these loved ones and are in grief right now and feeling the pain of earthly loss. We pray once again for your comfort and your strength. We pray, Lord, that you would direct their lives and order their affairs, both in the spirit and in the natural realm, to bring them into a future and a hope in Christ. Lord, we thank you for this meeting today. You know, the decisions that are made here will affect many lives, maybe for many years. And we acknowledge the fact that without you, as your word says, we can do nothing. So we invoke your presence, we invoke your wisdom. We ask you to come and to think through our minds if need be, and to give the wisdom that's needed to the supervisors and every person that might be a part of this meeting and the things that come out of this meeting. We honor you and praise you once again and thank you for your presence. In Jesus' name, amen.
Salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Sorry for. All right. That brings us to the consent calendar. Are there any items any supervisor would like to have pulled for further discussion?
Public comment.
Oh, public comment. Yeah.
The first 15 minutes of each regular session are set aside for members of the public to address the board on any matter under jurisdiction of the board, but not appearing on the agenda. The board will not take action on the items presented under public comment. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Anyone addressing the board is asked to print their name clearly on the speaker sheet at the podium and state their name and county of residence for the record.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Jared with Public Works, and just wanted to give a quick update. We just had a meeting this morning with our FHWA partners on the Avenue 26 project, and I'm happy to say that that is going to be kicking off here probably in the next month or so under construction.
Yay!
And I actually have a set of plans and specs for Supervisor Rogers that I was going to give to him, so I'll leave that in your office for you. But yeah, we're excited. This is a long time coming and anxious to get this going. The contract, I believe, is gives the contractor till about November to complete the work. But my guess is with the contractor that was awarded the project, they'll probably better that schedule as they did on our current project. So looking forward to getting that done, and probably going to be some inconvenience for a little bit out there, but I'm sure it's going to be a lot better once we're done. So.
Yeah, it's always
Was
fun
that
to
the
turn.
same company that did Road 16?
No, actually, Granite Construction was a low bidder on the Avenue 26 project, and they're also doing our Midtown connector.
It's always
Well, that'll be great.
fun to turn
I'm so
paper into
happy.
asphalt. So
Yes, they're going to work some miracles out there for
Yeah.
sure.
that'll be good for circulation for everybody for years and years to come.
Sure will.
Yep.
It's shocking how many people use Avenue 26 to get to Oakhurst and of course Golden Raymond. I mean, it would surprise people. It's like a connector between Chowchilla and Oakhurst. So it really is it is a fantastic project. Not to mention the recreation that'll take place at Eastman.
Yeah, and I would just, to your comments, Supervisor Rogers, Eastman Lake, Army Corps of Engineers, this is a federal land access project, which is federal funding, which we were able to secure by having a match to that with our Measure T program. So another opportunity for us to leverage Measure T funds, and basically, I think we tripled it almost on this project.
That's amazing.
Jared,
Fantastic.
without Measure T, which is our local self-help measure, would this project be moving forward?
I don't believe so. And if it did, we would have other projects that would not happen because we would need to use other funding for that. So
It's a measure for not only the county, but for the city of Madera. There's many projects in the city of Madera that have benefited that would not have happened without Measure T, as well as the city of Chowchilla. Thank you.
Absolutely.
This will reduce vehicle miles traveled by quite a bit too, for people going up to there, coming from down south. So it does everything, cleans the air, gets people quicker and safer to these areas. So great project. Thanks for bringing that forward.
Yeah, it cuts off at least 20 miles on that trip, Brett. So you're right. And that is without a doubt right now one of the worst roads in the county. It's almost an impasse. And yeah, this is a great project.
Any other public comment? Anything in webland?
Nothing in Webland.
All right. And we'll call close to public comment. And now we'll go on to consent calendar. Is that okay, Tom?
Yeah.
All right. Looks like Supervisor Gonzalez has an item that she'd like to pull.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to pull item E and H just for comment, not for any questions.
Okay. E and H. Anybody else? Scott?
Yeah, just note for the board and then also the public if there's interest. Item 5T is the helicopter agreement with the sheriff's office. You may note in your packet, it's the county's standard agreement. However, the scope of services attached to that agreement did have a handwritten notation from the contractor in that. So just to call to your attention, the sheriff's office is okay with that notation. So just know that the additional rate that was included in there is acceptable to the sheriff's office. So the recommendation is to approve that.
Okay. All right, so Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yeah, thank you. So for item E, we will be considering the appointment of Mayor Pro Tem Anita Evans to serve on the Fresno Madera Agency on Aging. And I just want to thank Anita for her willingness to serve on this board. We have a lack of representation on that board, and so your service will be greatly appreciated on that board. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
And then on item H, just a request, I know Joel from admin sent some numbers regarding the assistance that we were able to help businesses, but I'd like to request of Madera Coalition if they can provide an update on the people, just kind of give us an overview of who and where they were able to help and whatever the gaps were. So
just
can
to have
try
them
to
come
help.
back for a later.
Yeah, just to
just to
provide us
see
with an update.
Okay.
That's all. Thank you.
All right. Any other supervisors have any questions on any consent calendar items? None. Is there any public comment on the consent calendar?
Move to approve.
Yes.
Oh,
Sorry about that. I think I interrupted you, Tom Wheeler. I apologize.
No, this is public comment time. This is your time. He interrupted you, Leticia.
Whoa.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. I kind of just want to give just a small public comment on H in regards to the ARPA funding and the contracting. So we definitely appreciate.
Leticia, first, your name for the record.
I'm sorry, I took this for granted. I'm like, yeah, I'm here all the
Yeah,
time.
I already called you by your name, but we just need it for the record.
No, of course. Sorry about that. Yeah, so Leticia, I am with Leadership Council, and I'm giving a public comment on matters on edge with ARPA and housing. So yeah, so we're really happy to see that, there's ARPA allocations for helping folks out. We just want to encourage to ensure that these programs are easily accessible and encourage to have language barriers addressed and also allow for eligibility for non-citizens who are also being affected by the pandemic and who are the most vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question on that same item, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Do we-
Yeah, this would be for our budget office, probably for administration, whoever's administrating that. I'd like to know that we're overseeing this closely to make sure that that the funds are distributed properly, and like to get a report back on what is going on with those ARPA funds when we use a third-party distribution system.
Yeah, I think that Supervisor Gonzalez had already brought that forward as a kind of as direction to have
Right.
them come in and give that report. But Joel?
Good.
Yes, thank you, Supervisors. Joel Begay, County Administrative Office. Yes, we will be overseeing the program and the contracts the same way we oversaw CARES Act. There are strict federal reporting requirements, so those statistics that we will be updating your board with are mandated to be tracked as part of the ARPA legislation. So, and yes, so there is oversight. We are also partnered with the Auditor's Office, with the Internal Auditors Unit. They're reviewing processes related to this and the business, small business grants to make sure we're in compliance with both local, state, and federal requirements.
The cost of administration are part of that, am I correct?
Yes, Supervisor. So there is a 2.9% of the ARPA that's being used for administrative time specific for those issues. In the January 25 update, we highlighted those. It is not part of the 2.2 pay. This is direct services plus administrative hours for the two contractors. So this does not include county staff time in the 2.2.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions on H? I'd like to have them come back in and give a report. Go ahead.
I'll second the motion.
David made the motion. Is that correct?
Wheeler did.
Oh, Wheeler? Okay.
Tom.
Roll
Yeah.
call vote, please.
Supervisor Wheeler,
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez,
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers,
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras.
Yes.
Chairman Frazier.
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
All right. Consent calendar is done. We'll move to discussion items. 6A, Board of Supervisors Department, proclamation recognizing the month of February as Black History Month. Supervisor Gonzalez?
Thank you. So we have some guests here today that we invited. We'd like to, February is Black History Month, and we have a proclamation. We've invited Mr. Luther Slack from the Madera chapter of the NAACP. We also have with us, as we stated earlier, Miss Anita Evans, also a member of the NAACP, and with her is Stanley Harris. So thank you for joining us this morning. And if I may, I'll read the proclamation and then we'll do a formal presentation. So whereas Black History Month is an annual celebration to learn and share many of the historic and present contributions of Black Americans, and whereas Black History Month was started by historian Carter G. Woodson in the early 1920s, also known as the father of Black history, to celebrate raise awareness of Black history and achievements, as well as emphasize the history of the challenges Black Americans face. And whereas this year's theme is Black Health and Wellness, which acknowledges not only the legacy of Black scholars and medical practitioners in Western medicine, but other ways of healing through birth workers, doulas, midwives, naturopaths, herbalists, and other Black diaspora. And whereas Madera County acknowledges and observes Black History Month as an opportunity to continue to create an accessible, equitable, and transparent path for all individuals to thrive economically, academically, and socially. And whereas Madera County continues to work towards being an inclusive community in which all individuals are respected and acknowledged for their contributions local, nationally, and globally. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of Supervisors of the County of Madera, State of California, does hereby proclaim the month of February 2022 as Black History Month in Madera County, reaffirming the county's commitment to creating a path of opportunities and equity, as well as expressing our sincere gratitude and appreciation for Black Americans for their contributions. And it's signed by all the members of this board. And so, Luther, Anita, if you have anything you'd like to contribute, please come to the podium.
First and foremost, blessings to each and every one of you, to everyone that's here. Thank you so very much to the Board of Supervisors for recognizing February as Black History Month. We had a beautiful celebration this past Sunday, which was, I am proud to be Black history, and I am. In behalf of Mr. Slack, Stanley Mackey, have something? I just want to say thank you once again, and thank you for recognizing, because that's who we all are.
Good morning, all. On behalf of Ms. Gloria Brown, who's President of Madera NAACP and the NAACP, I'd like to thank you for this recognition of Black History Month, and we look forward to working with you throughout Madera County. So, thank you.
And this year is the health and wellness. I encourage everyone to look up Percy Julian, who is one of the most important scientists in terms of the medical fields and the different discoveries that he made, still to this day are keeping all of us healthy. And I mean, if you look at the list of I'd list them off, but I mean, it's like almost a mile long of contributions to the medical field. And without him making those discoveries, you know, a lot of us wouldn't be here today. So I think it's always important to look back at that and see those things. So, Percy Julian, everyone look it up. It's great.
Hey, it's okay. That was me. Me, baby. Yeah. That was me.
All right. Is there any public comment on 6A? Seeing none, we'll move on to 6B.
Status of the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget and the county's short and long-term financial outlook.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Joel Begay, County Administrative Office. Before you is an updated 5-year county financial outlook using the numbers that we have as of the December 31st reports. The first column is really recapping how we ended fiscal year 2020-21. We closed the books June 30th, but those were not audited until the end of December, so we have the final numbers. We ended the year, on row 3, you will see that we ended the year with a net county cost of $72.2 million, which is significantly less than the budgeted net county cost of $86.5. Though we walk you through why that is. One-time development-related revenue of $3.3 million. These were received in fiscal year 2020-21. These are spikes that you would experience with increased building activity. Like we mentioned before during budget, these aren't an ongoing thing. We're experiencing a high degree of construction, and in the years where we don't have a high degree of construction, the general fund fills the difference as we still need building inspectors, permitters, and staff at the recorder's office. In addition, last fiscal year, combined benefit the general fund received from CARES and ARPA revenues totaled almost $7 million. disfunded public safety staff and public health staff. But this is the overall benefit that was received. With the revenues declining, this allowed us to maintain staffing levels and maintain the same level of essential services during fiscal year 2020-2021. And finally, the final salary savings of just over $4 million in the general fund helped reduce a budgeted net county cost from $86.5 million to $72.2. Moving on to rows 10, 11, and 12, what we wanted to show you is what is our true operating net county cost need without the benefit of these one-time revenues. So we added back on row 10 the one-time development-related revenues that were received in fiscal year 2020-21, and we added back the one-time benefit that we received and basically bailed the general fund out by being able to use majority of this as CARES Act funds to help us preserve essential services. Our operating net county cost requirement for that fiscal year is $82.5 million. Discretionary revenues improved in fiscal year 2020-21, ending the year with $80.6 million, leaving a final structural deficit number of just under $1.9 million. That is on row 14. Because of one-time revenues, we began the year with $7.4 million fund balance. Because of one-time revenues and being able to utilize CARES Act to preserve essential services, we restored the fund balance to $15.8 million, which is roughly where we were before the pandemic, before we took the big hits in 1920 and reduced it to 7.4. Kind of just want to point out, though, that structurally we are still depending on one-time revenues, that if we did not have the one-time spike in development related, it would be a much bigger deficit at the end of the year. Going to fiscal year 2021-22, it is still too early to see where we're going to end up in appropriation revenues, but we do have preliminary numbers of where we think our operating net county cost requirement will be by June 30th. And we want to just walk you through that. In the structural deficit section, beginning on row 4, our adopted net county cost is $89.8 million. At the moment, we are estimating labor impacts in the current year to total $3.7 million. This is estimated. This is not representing all the stratified, but what the estimated cost of current proposals are out there. 2.1 of that is the ARPA-related premium pay that was either ratified or proposed to labor units. CARES and ARPA funds offsetting some of those labor impacts in the current year equal $3.7 million. That is what we are using right now to help pay for that one-time stipends and one-time premium pay. And then estimated salary savings of $3.9 million. We would like to note that with the improving revenue picture, we've eased up a little bit on the, not eased up a little bit, but the 10% salary savings target in areas where there is no attrition. We're not forcing people to get rid of staff or move staff to reach that. So that's why this reflects a slightly lower number, but it's coinciding with the improving revenue picture. If you recall, board, during the budget hearings, if our revenue picture improved, our first priority is to, set that salary savings level to a more ongoing basis, so we're not worrying about designating a ton of vacancies in staff. So this reflects our best estimate of where we're going to end up in salary savings over the year, leaving a projected end-of-year net county cost of $85.8 million. We then walk through what is our true operating net county cost requirement projected for the end of the fiscal year, which means we have to add back in row 11 the benefit that we're receiving from ARPA of $3.7 million, leading to a net county cost requirement of $89.5, but with an improving revenue picture of $83.7, the structural deficit is $5.7. Again, we would like to note that this includes significant one-time payments that are being funded with ARPA. That is not necessarily going to be an ongoing operating cost requirement. Using the ARPA funds to fund those one-time premium pay payments, we project that the year-end general fund deficit would be just over $2 million, which would then draw down the fund balance to a level of 13.7 by the end of the year. Instead of going on each column, I kind of want to focus your board on where we think discretionary revenues are going to be on row 13. For next year and for the year after next, we are projecting a steady increase based on improving economic trends. These numbers reflect property tax growth of 3%, which is not too hopeful, but not too pessimistic. We still have to account for the fact that we're likely not going to sustain double-digit residential growth, and that ag values continue to hurt or depress the average property tax. But we feel that 3% growth over the next few years is achievable. The same thing with sales tax. The thing we want to note with sales tax, based on our conversations with HDL, is that the double-digit growth the sales tax has experienced is likely not to continue for counties that do not have distribution centers. There's been a fundamental shift of how the state pool of sales tax has been allocated. In the past couple of years, we have benefited from a statewide pool, all 58 counties receiving a portion of distribution center sales tax transactions. That has since been changed into basically direct point of sale transactions from distribution centers as county pools of the counties that have those distribution centers. The net effect is, instead of experiencing double-digit growth over the next years, it's been reduced back to a more modest 3%. We're obviously hoping that we beat that, but we are trying to be cautiously optimistic over the out years. With that trend, we project the structural operating deficit to continue to decrease, even in light of the estimated impacts of the labor proposals that are out right now, decreasing to a level of 2.8 million in fiscal year 24-25. Again, if we beat the revenue projections, which we are reasonably confident we would be, it would further reduce that projected structural operating deficit. And what's not noted here too, and probably is a question that what you might have, is are these one-time development related revenues expected to continue? While we're still experiencing robust growth, we also want to point out, though, that the planning department and other departments impacted by robust growth would have to meet that demand. So the reason why we don't have an estimate on excess or one-time development related revenues in the current year is that we don't know how the additional resources that those development related functions are going to need to keep up with the growth. But like we did with fiscal year 2020-21, after June 30th, we will update that number, and any excess does contribute to the fund balance. But again, as your board directed, the admin office is to be prudent with that, because in the lean years where we still have to maintain some staffing, even when there's no development going, we need to keep in mind that it will be drawing down some of those increases in fund balance that was created with the spike. With that, we'll open it up for questions from the board.
I got a couple, Brett, when you're ready.
Go ahead, Tom.
On the midterm projection, 2021-22, that line 5 at 33.7 million, does that include benefits and CalPERS and all that?
Yes, Supervisor. That includes, that's fully loaded on the fully loaded impact of the labor financial proposals that we have out right now, including the premium pay, which some units have ratified.
Right. I just want to make sure those are in that same amount of dollars. Then the other one is, so we are not getting any money from this point on from the distribution centers that's not in our county? Is that what you said a while ago?
Yes, Supervisor. Basically, they're treating it as a county pool. So yes, those transactions do go to the county where the distribution center is. It's a big shift. I think in the valley, it's amounting to about tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, because it should go where the county or the sales were. I would think, if Tom Wheeler bought something from one of the warehouses, Madera County should get that tax, but I guess they
Exactly.
changed the rules.
It's just like with cars, it doesn't matter where you buy them. The sales tax ends up coming to your county of residence.
Right.
Right.
But I guess this don't though, so. Was that a bill that somebody in the legislature passed, Joe?
I don't, I'm not aware of any.
Then how did that change?
I don't know that we have the exact answer for you, but I think that was a policy change by the Franchise Tax Board of where that tax was going to land, because it is currently done the way you're describing it, and it's going back to the way it used to be, which is where the warehouse is cited for point of sale.
Yeah.
I do not.
I imagine the counties that have warehouses were lobbying for that.
Yep. You know that.
Oh, yeah. I have a question.
Yes, Supervisor Rogers?
Yes, thank you. So if I'm reading this correctly, it appears that by 24-25, we're going to utilize 10.4 million of our reserves, correct?
That is correct. If revenues stay as projected and does not better our current projections.
Right. Did you take into account, I know that there's an expectation that housing is going to continue strong for quite some time because there's a 4 million unit deficit in the nation concerning housing, and California is pretty strong because the lion's share of that is in California, I believe, and we have some pretty good developments that are in place, including in Chowchilla. I'm trying to think of the name of the. My brain's going blank on the name, but there is a significant development in Chowchilla. Jay could probably help me with the name of it, but we have at least 3 major housing developments in the county at this point. And are those thoughts incorporated?
Yes, Supervisor. So we consider that we consider a strong residential. With a strong residential and considering the ag and the commercial sector, we have been averaging, I believe, just under 6% per year. But that is with the very robust housing market right now. And while we expect it to continue, we're maintaining our projections at 3% year over year. And
I think probably between now and 24-25, we can the consideration of GSA components probably are not as impacting as they will be post that period. I think we're going to have to start considering that on a percentage level.
yes, Super, that's a very good point. And I also wanted to add that the developments, specifically in the 41 corridor in Rio Mesa, for purposes of the contribution to the discretionary revenues, we have to account for the fact that we have service level commitments for fire and sheriff. So we try to take that off the bat because we know what they cost, and they cost about half of the property tax proceeds. So what we're only accounting for in here are the contributions to the non-fire and non-law enforcement functions, so that we make sure that we meet those development agreement service levels that we said we would in those developments. And that's how roughly it breaks out. So it wouldn't get the full benefit, but we have to account for that because it's like a self-funded budget within the sheriff's office, which doesn't get the general discretionary pot.
Yeah, that's
Right.
That's the problem with growth comes new services for those areas as well. So,
Correct.
It's not like it just goes into the pot and raises the pot. It also raises the liability too.
And, and on a positive note, we know it's taken care of, but we just can't count full of it
Yeah.
here. We only count the ones that are in excess of that, so.
All right, Supervisor Poitras?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, staff, and Joel and your team for putting together this projection. I think that this projection shows the need to continue to be careful and prudent in regards to our financial expenditures. When it comes to certain agreements and so forth, they continue to go on and they continue to increase on an operating expense side, whereas projected income is not always guaranteed, it's not always reliable, or at least a certain percentage of it. And I think we can see from the last year, it was what, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I guess, when we got into 2020, we were expecting a huge deficit, in our county. And we were scrambling, and then, things turned around. And I think the reason I mention that, it just shows how dynamic our economy is, going both ways. So it's important to be careful. I look at this projected ending fund balance at the end of 24-25, and I'm just going, yikes, and I know that we're being conservative, but you look at as a percentage of our overall expenditures, it's not very much money, and I think it's important for the sake of our constituents, our stakeholders, our shareholders, and our employees, that we look at targeting a much higher ending fund balance so that we can, if we do have to come in for a landing, let's make it a soft landing and not a crash. So,
Yeah,
just my comments.
Those are kind of similar, I'm just glad that we had set up this fund, because before we didn't even have it. Where would we have been without having that? The whole thing would have just been in the negative. So, but to Rob's point, protecting that, keeping it stable, and then looking to even in our future projections how to refund it and get it back up to healthy levels is important. That's
Yeah. Mr. Chair,
yes.
I just wanted to chime in with Rob on that. I totally agree, and that's why I brought up the 10.4 million tap into the reserves. Just imagine, without that reserve, we would at that point be a little over $5 million in deficit. That's not good, and it actually more than that. So I'm just really grateful that we have austerity measures in place, that we've kind of threaded the needle nicely, where taking care of our business and our obligations to the general public has been met, and yet we have been frugal in response to times of plenty and put that money aside for the future. So having that $15 million in place is a small, really, compared to what we're spending, as Rob said, overall, it's a small percentage, but it has definitely proved to be the right thing to do, and I want us to continue to. I want to echo what has been said. Austerity is the must.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes, thank you. Just one question, Joel. On our budgeted revenues, does that include, and our labor costs, does that include the increased cost of CalPERS?
Yes, Supervisor. So we factored in, we factored in the increasing CalPERS rate over the next, we had an assumption,
Okay.
and not only that, but health benefits and retiree health impacts.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just a point, and I know a lot of it had to was just because we couldn't find people, but those one-time revenues that we're getting, a lot of that is contracted out, and so when those services aren't needed, instead of having to lay people off, we just don't need a contract. And so the costs go down at that. And so as we're looking at this growth and trying to keep up with it, where we can contract for items that are based on economic cycles and where the housing market is, continuing to do that instead of just bringing on new county employees, so that we're not left with a lot of employees with nothing to do, as we saw has happened in a lot of different areas when they try and meet the needs of that economic cycle. I'd much rather continue to go down that path of contracting out those services so that when they're not needed, we're not still having to pay for them after the fact. And I think it's job security for those, because we have enough to do with the employees that we have in lean and fat times. And so I'd like to be able to do that so that we can preserve those employees in the lean times.
And Supervisor, I don't want to speak for the Chief of Economic Development Services, but as from the budgeting standpoint, we certainly observe them balancing that, have done a good balance in adding permanent staff versus contract staff. And I do know that they're paying attention to that. So.
I know too, and I see that there, and I just want to keep that going. And in any
to correct my math comment earlier on that, it would be a $10 million deficit without that reserve fund. Am I right, Joel?
Yeah, if we
somewhere near 10.4 million.
Right.
All right. Any other comments from the board? Any public comment? Thank you, Joel, for bringing everybody down on this fine Tuesday.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
And that was, there's no action needed on that one. But Joel, you keep taking action on it, okay? 6C?
We have a 10:30 GSA report. 7A.
Yeah. All right. It's 10:49, so yeah, we'll do the 10:30 GSA.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Stephanie Agneson, your Director of Water and Natural Resources. I'm joined online with Deputy County Counsel Mike Linden, also Kevin Kostick, Nancy Fan, and Jim Armstrong from Raftellus, our rate consulting firm, and Dan Cox and Bobby Chung from KNN, the county's municipal advisors. We have a short status update on the county GSA rate study for you. So beginning last year, we quantified the costs of our projects. For the county GSA, our rate study includes recharge, a portion for each subbasin of domestic well mitigation, land repurposing, we're calling that SALC, and sites reservoir participation. We shared out in summer rate policies and pricing objectives that included financing recharge. In fall, we did an annual cash needs and shared that out, as well as what a fixed rate per acre would look like. We're asked by the board to return with a hybrid rate that would include fixed and volumetric pricing. So we're here to discuss options with you today. And then this winter, we've been reviewing data and water use for 2021. So I'm here today to share our fixed and volumetric options and logic along with Kevin from Raftellus. And then we can come back in March with some final rate options for a 5-year period brought to your board for consideration. Here's what our schedule looks like. This shows the dates that I was talking about. We saw preliminary rates in December. The water allocations are in effect now, starting in January. You're hearing an update now, and then we'll come back with revised rates in March. We plan on having a virtual open house on Zoom where people will have breakout rooms and recharge, land repurposing, domestic well mitigation, and sites with experts on hand to answer their questions. Then we're looking at final rate authorization April 5th with public notice around April 15th. There's a 45-day protest period, and then the public hearing for rate adoption would be at the beginning of June. So that's kind of a best case scenario in what we're looking at in terms of scheduling. Outreach, we're developing a mailer for all of the affected parcels. And there's a screenshot of what we're working on the right. There's also that open house I mentioned with the breakout sessions that we'll schedule so people can drill down into the costs. Okay, I will hand this off to Kevin Kostick from Raftellus, so he will probably need to be unmuted.
Just what everyone wants to see on tax day is a new fee.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
Thanks, Stephanie, and good morning, board chair and supervisors. Good to be back with you. As Stephanie mentioned, today we're going to look at a couple options for a hybrid or a fixed and volumetric rate structure for the county GSAs. Again, the two options that we'll present to you in a final form in March include the fixed only, so that's what was shared in December, where the farm unit would pay based on the enrolled acreage in the farm unit only, a fixed component. And then a fixed plus volumetric, where the fixed component is the same. It's the fee per enrolled acre based on the farm unit acreage. And then a volumetric component that would be priced per acre foot, so volumetrically per acre foot of water use based on a farm unit's transitional water use within the transitional water pool. Go to the next slide. So as far as the rate structure logic, this is what we're showing is one approach to building up the rate components between fixed and volumetric, where we can include a meaningful amount of cost to a volumetric rate in a logical manner. And to be clear, it's not the only way we can do this, but this is an approach where we're kind of objectively looking at what costs and projects could go into each of the two components. So the first in the fixed component per enrolled acre, this would be representative of the sustainable yield portion of an allocation and would recover the costs of SALC, the land repurposing program. That is an incentive payment per acre, and this fee component would be per acre, so it's a nice one-to-one there. Also with SALC, we're not talking about new water provided like recharge at sites, reservoir participation. It's simply part of achieving the sustainable yield over the long term. The volumetric component would again apply to the amount of transitional water use within a farm unit's total allocation. That would recover our other three project components, recharge, sites reservoir participation, and the domestic well mitigation program. So having the water supply projects in the volumetric component to price those projects is as new water to supplement the sustainable yield over time. And what's nice about this is that over the long term, the domestic well program is retired sometime out 10 or 12 years from now. The transitional water pool itself goes to zero. And so what we're left with are the costs and the new water from the recharge facilities and from sites reservoir. And just to be crystal clear again, the volumetric component would be the transitional water portion of the allocation, where we get to provide flexibility in those that use less than the total allocation. What we don't have are farm units. When a farm unit exceeds their allocation, we're not recovering project costs within that overage. We'll be looking at a separate replacement water charge over an allocation, and we'll be presenting that at our next meeting.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, you may. Are you done?
Yeah,
are you done with your presentation?
Oh, we've got a handful more slides.
Let's get through the slides, David, and if you can
Yeah,
hold
that's
that
fine.
question until after,
I thought
that'd
it
be
was
great.
done.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we have as far as a fixed and volumetric recovery options are the two alternatives here. So the first is based on that rate logic that was provided in the prior slide. So when we allocate project costs between fixed and volumetric buckets. What we're showing here is approximates on the cost recovery. So in Madera, we'd be recovering 56% of our costs on the fixed, about 44% on the volumetric, that per acre foot charge. In Chowchilla, that's about 38% fixed and nearly 2/3 volumetric. And then in Delta Mendota, we'd be looking at 100% fixed, because in that subbasin, the only project that we have is the land repurposing project, SALC. The second option would be to simply make a policy decision, the board to make a decision on what they believe is the appropriate amount of cost recovery in a fixed and a volumetric bucket. So that wouldn't be representative of any specific costs, but still cost base. And we give these two alternatives to represent kind of what we feel are upper and lower bounds on volumetric cost recovery. So on the high side, on the rate logic, we have 3 of our 4 project costs in there. Then we get close to 50-50 split in Madera and about 2/3 in Chowchilla. And given the limited amount of history that we have on farm unit water use, really we just have 1 year from our dry run year in 2021, and also based on our future borrowing requirements for recharge projects, we wouldn't advise going higher than those splits that you see. And then on the low side, this policy alternative, anything less than a 25% volumetric rate doesn't provide much of a price signal on water or meaningful flexibility within the allocation, which is kind of the whole point of going through this exercise of deriving a fixed and volumetric option. And again, both of these are cost-based and should recover about the same amount of revenue, but how you get there is different. So if we can go to the next slide, where we're showing our preliminary estimates on fees and rates. So these numbers still subject to change. We're finalizing costs, finalizing enrolled acreage and estimated transitional water use numbers. We're also only showing the final 3 years of the 5-year rate schedule, and this is intentional, and it's addressed in our final slide. And then these rates that you see here show an average across each of the last 3 years of the 5-year rate study. And so if we walk through the table, the first subbasin is the Madera subbasin, and we see the fixed and the variable based on either the rate logic, so that's the project-based allocation, or a policy basis, saying 75% to the fixed component, 25% to the volumetric component. So the difference there, again, thinking kind of upper and lower bounds on variable or volumetric cost recovery, $145 per enrolled acre in Madera, $115 for the volumetric component, and then the policy basis, $195 on the fixed component, and the variable, $65 per acre foot. So obviously inverse there. So as we step up the fixed percentage of cost recovery, that fixed fee is going to go up and the volumetric component comes down. And then similar results in Chowchilla, and really the big difference is in Delta Mendota, where if we do it on a project basis, again, it's entirely fixed per enrolled acre. If we do it on a policy basis, then we're at $110 on the fixed and have a $95 per acre foot volumetric rate.
So we wanted to make sure we discussed really explicitly with the board that there are some risks to the volumetric component. One of them is that most economists estimate a fair amount of land coming out of production. And I've put the estimates valley-wide up of 500,000 to 1 million acres coming out of irrigated production over a 20-year period. The estimates within Madera County are much less, but we're still talking about 30 to 50,000 acres coming out of production. If we decrease the amount of irrigated land coming out of production, that would be a decrease in revenue. This is the revenue that's paying for our projects. So with a volumetric component, there comes some risk. And of course, it also becomes a little bit more variable, which may limit our ability to finance capital projects and increase the interest rate that we pay on loans. So we've focused on arriving at an accurate estimate for future transitional water use, because if we estimate too high, the rates will end up being too low. And if we estimate too low, the rates will be high. So that kind of summarizes risks with the volumetric component that you saw on the previous 2 slides. So walking through.
Oh, go ahead.
I think we only have 2 more slides and then we can have questions. So we have a table here that walks through administration, fairness, financial stability, and confidence in measurement. So we're comparing, in this case, the acreage in the farm unit, a fixed rate per acre, to using a hybrid format. And we showed you 2 ways to do the hybrid format. In terms of administration, if it's based on acreage in your farm unit, that's very administratively easy for us to do. If it's based on a fixed and volumetric component, that becomes administratively more complex. So we would need to hire more people to handle that. In terms of fairness, the acreage in the farm unit may not feel fair. The hybrid rate may feel more fair because if you use less water, you're going to pay less. In terms of financial stability, using the fixed rate based on acreage in the farm unit is very stable, which means easier to get a loan, lower interest rates. We are, of course, the county GSA getting the loan, not the county. So we don't have a lending history or long operations to look back on. And then the fixed and volumetric rate is less financially stable. And then the last one is kind of an interesting one, which we wanted to flag, since I know we've had some discussions about EraWatch a week ago in our meeting. While remote satellite measurement is becoming very standard and the measurement we're using has been around for 20 years, growers don't have a ton of experience with it and are building experience. Those who enrolled with us a year ago have a year under their belt. In another year, they'll have 2 years under their belt. So while there is a lot of confidence in terms of I know how many acres I have in my farm unit, there is less confidence at this moment in time in using something that's calculating ETAW. So our recommendation is to assume that the first 2 years must use a fixed rate structure. That would give us time to build confidence in measurement technology. That would also leave us without a funding gap because we could assess this fee in 2022. If we used a volumetric or hybrid rate, we would need to wait until 2022 completed and then put it on property taxes in 2023. We would like to come back with you in March with 2 options. A fixed rate per enrolled acre for 5 years, and then a fixed rate as well as a volumetric rate for years 3 to 5. So fixed rate for the first 2, fixed and volumetric for years 3 to 5. We also think we should consider smoothing the rates. We've showed you what's basically a linear graph of the rates increasing. We could choose an average rate. That would mean that we're collecting a little bit more up front, but it would also mean a little bit less at the tail end. And then continue to meet with stakeholders to understand questions, concerns, and feedback. But that concludes our presentation. We would be glad to answer your questions.
Supervisor, I think you had a question. Thank you for having that.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to ask this. Just to start off with a comment that there was recently an article, I can't remember whether it was in the Fresno Bee or where it was, but they talked about I think the title of it was that some farmers were going to pay more for water than others. And it was basically a comment directed to about white areas versus water districts. And I remember in the article, they quoted Cole Upton, who was quite adept at analyzing these situations. And Cole pointed out the fact that for years, water district customers, have paid a tax to accommodate the projects, the water, everything that's been done, the delivery, and what have you. I pay that tax as well in the water district of CWD, and it amounts to I believe it's $115 let's see, I believe that's a parcel, if I'm not mistaken. And I think I've been paying that even when I had a smaller parcel. I paid it that specific amount on that parcel. But I'm not sure if it's, Stephanie, help me out. If you know what that is it per acre or is it per parcel?
I don't know, Supervisor Rogers, but your point is a good one. People in irrigation and water districts are already paying a rate on their property taxes.
I just wanted to point that out, that we are paying a yearly rate for those services that we're receiving, groundwater recharge. And I'm a very analytical kind of guy. So when I first moved to Chowchilla and bought a piece of land and got that tax, I went to the water district and I said, "What's this about?" I wanted to know why I was paying this extra tax. And of course, it pays for the projects that have created groundwater recharge for years in our region. And I wanted to make that point because I don't see a lack of equality in our proposals. I don't see that because we're just now catching up is what we're doing to the equity. In this volumetric idea, I see a problem with the cost of monitoring the volumetric of regulating that to make it cost effective. I just don't see how it's going to be cost effective because you're going to end up hiring more staff. You're going to end up having disputes over meters. It's going to create a circumstance with farmers that they're going to have their meters calibrated on a regular basis to make sure that the volumetric rate it's just going to create a whole world of regulation. And in my opinion, I think that's going to offset any benefit. And this is not about overlording their use of water. This is about creating a circumstance where we can survive. And we want the farmer to be able to survive as well. If we're not accomplishing that end, then it's for nothing. Then it's punitive. And we don't want that. So I also had a thought along the way about project development on the part of the farmer themselves. Not all of the solutions are going to come from government development. Farmers are very adept at creating mitigations for themselves. And that's how a lot of the innovations that have occurred have come about to begin with, including Bryant Dam and a lot of those things. So many of those things never came as a result of government coming up with ideas. They were more of the individual and the collective group got together and said, "Hey, we need to do this and that," and that is very an important component of what we're going to do. So my thoughts were a mitigation that would offset any costs that we might be charging if as it's evaluated based on its benefit to the overall concept of water conservation and groundwater recharge. Do you understand what I'm saying there?
Yes, I think I do. And we've encompassed that within the recharge program. We have the opportunity for growers to opt in to do recharge on their land and receive a credit for that.
Okay. And that and included in that, are we considering like if a person makes a major investment in the cost of doing a project, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be groundwater recharge, if they could prove that they were reducing their use by a third somehow, and then we evaluate the benefit, the value of that per acre and offset those per acre charges somehow.
Well, what I was alluding to is the recharge projects. That does have the ability for someone to do the work. As you suggest, a lot of heavy lifting can happen on the grower side and get a proportional credit for that. That's where the cost benefit analysis comes in for recharge.
And also timing of those projects. Some people have already done some projects that are going to have ongoing benefits. Are we considering that within a certain time frame?
So the rate study absolutely considers contributions that growers have made. And in fact, that is why the rates for recharge or that component is what it is, which is less than it would be. This is not the county GSA taking over, buying tons of land and building dedicated basins. This is using the most cost-effective route, which is on-farm recharge with growers doing a lot of the work in exchange for credit.
That's great. Now, I wanted that voiced. Stephanie helped me out. I can't see the charts or the screens or anything, but per acre, what was the, I can't see that, but just verbalize it for me again. The per acre, not the volumetric, but the per acre, if you did just straight per acre.
So we showed that last time, and we don't have it here for comparison because it's not quite apples to apples. What we showed last time, we've had to escalate a couple of those costs, including legal costs. But we will bring that back to you in March for a final decision, and we'll also show a hybrid rate at that time.
Okay. So we'll know volumetric plus per acre, if that's going to be cost benefit. We also need to include in that analysis the cost of the service of monitoring the volumetric and what our projected thoughts on that are. I'm sure you're going to do that.
Thank you. No, that's a good point. The volumetric component definitely adds staff costs, and we need to quantify that, and it's not currently in that rate.
Yeah, we need to understand that, because if it doesn't do anything for us financially, why do it? If it doesn't help us get to our goal of providing more water, sustaining the groundwater levels, it just creates a bureaucracy that is untenable for no reason, and I don't want to do that. I want to keep this as simple as possible, the KISS method, as well as the I think the freedom of the farmers to be able to still control their own future somehow would be really important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Poitras.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stephanie, just one question in regards to a volumetric approach. We would be monitoring the volume utilized through AeroWatch, not through meters, correct?
Well, I currently think we have two options. Everybody has AeroWatch, which we need because it's the only scalable solution, and we're monitoring all of the acres, not just the irrigated acres in the subbasin. And I know that's a creepy thing to say, so I apologize. I would add that people have the option to put on meters as long as they're calibrated, installed correctly, and they're taking a monthly meter read. And that will need to go through an appeals process. But the primary method is AeroWatch, and then there's an alternative.
Okay, very good. You know, in this this discussion today, it's all about, you know, we're not charging to be punitive. You know, we're looking at charges for projects, and we're looking at ways to tap into essentially the flows that are coming in from the Madera Canal at some point that that MID has access to, and it would be any additional flows, the 215 waters over and above what MID is utilizing. So So it's really to develop turnouts from existing distribution systems, and then the turnouts would distribute water to these water recharge areas in the wide area. And has been mentioned by, well, I think it's just logic that it's not going to be a very long season. You know, it's going to be when we have good flows and good rains in February and March and excess water, and it could be a couple of weeks at the beginning and a couple of weeks at the end if we get ditch water through the end of October. But so that said, I believe that a hybrid approach from a grower standpoint is something that they will buy into. Number one, I believe that by just doing a fixed rate, I think it's great. I think the bond market likes that, and I think it's nice and clean. But also, from a grower perspective, with Sigma, I believe a lot of growers feel that their rights have been taken away and that they want some freedom as far as what they can do. So I believe a hybrid gives growers a little bit of discretion in terms of say, additional waters, a little bit of opportunity to manage the application of water, whereas a volumetric approach kind of takes that away. So that's number one. But I also understand, you know, again, on the bond markets, that going purely volumetric is probably a no-go. The bond markets want some certainty in terms of the ability to collect fees so that they can pay their bondholders, their investors, and a fixed rate is something that gives them more flexibility or more certainty in terms of the funds available. So on the other hand, you know, again, we've got growers who I believe would like to have that flexibility in terms of less water, more water, how they apply it. So for that reason, I would support a hybrid approach, again, with the caveat being, what is it going to mean if our bond advisors could let us know how, you know, what that's going to do with our, you know, we have no rating. We're new. You pointed that out. So what's that going to mean from an interest rate standpoint and ability to, you know, to even sell bonds? So I think we need to find out that information.
So KNN is listening online. If Bobby or Dan would like to comment on the bond market, now might be an opportune time.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning, members of the board. I'm Dan Cox with KNN Public Finance, the county's municipal advisor in connection with this GSA project. Yeah, for the bonds, I think a key point here is that this will be a new fee and a new entity. The large share of municipal entities, as well as other water issuers such as irrigation districts, do have a combination of a fixed fee and a volumetric fee, which lends to stability of revenues. I think some of the challenges here is that at the time of the initial bond issuance, it would still be in the early stages. There would really be no operating history. And really, if it takes a couple of years to get the measurement system in place and calibrated and working, you know, there's really no track record of the measurement system being in place. So that presents some challenges. So a volumetric component is generally acceptable. There are some challenges here. I don't think we're really at the point of saying it has to be all fixed because of that, because of bond market issues. But a hybrid with a significant fixed portion is likely acceptable. We're a couple of years away from actually getting a rating and going into the market. So, things will be evaluated based on the circumstances at the time and the credit environment at the time.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, it's looking at, I know that we've got, people out there that want to go purely volumetric, and then there's the, there's the certainty of the fixed option, and I think that's where a hybrid approach gives the grower some flexibility in regards to, how they apply water and not just, that flat fee. And so, anyway, thanks for that response. Appreciate it.
Brett?
Yeah,
Mr. Tom?
I had a question real quick for Dan. Tom, is that all right? And then you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know, Stephanie, in the presentation, you had said that it would start like for the first 2 years at volumetric. So does that give it?
Start at a fixed rate. For the
I'm sorry.
first
Yeah,
year.
I'm sorry. It starts at a fixed rate for the. Oh, is this what? So Dan, that looks good when we first come out, right? That is 2 years enough time to in the bond market to have it where it's just purely a fixed rate for those 2 years, or if it was 5 years and then it went to the hybrid, would that be looked at more favorably?
I mean, if we're looking at 2 years of history with the 2 years before issuing bonds, the 2 years gives an indication of collection history, willingness and ability of users to make the payments, but doesn't provide a history based on a volumetric charge. And so I think that's where, further down the road, once there's history, volumetric charge gets a little less problematic. And again, we're not necessarily saying that even after those first 2 years, it really has to continue to be fixed. But ideally, there'd be a couple of years of history of the, with a volumetric component having been levied by the time bonds are issued.
Okay, perfect. Tom?
Yeah, two questions. One is, Stephanie, have you seen what any other counties and water basins are doing, whether they're using volumetric or fixed amounts?
That is a good question. I do not think there are any other GSAs going out at the moment for rates.
Okay.
I can answer that.
I'm not done yet,
No,
David.
Tom, let Tom finish, David, and then you can answer him.
Okay.
One more question.
Yeah, the other thing is that after listening to all this and everything, I think we really need to do a fixed amount, at least for 2 years, maybe 5 years, so we can get some numbers, because right now, the farmer's going to keep pumping no matter what, because they got their crops to run. And to me, it's just not stable enough, the hybrid or the other volumetric, how you say that word, to make it stable, that we'll be able to do any of these projects. Because without doing the projects and getting some recharge some way, the state's going to come down on us and say, hey, what are you guys doing? And so we got to have that volume of money coming in. I know it's going to be expensive, but we have that, or we don't have no water at all, so they dry up all the crops. So, and that's what's happening right now in the last 50 years. So,
All right, David, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, I'm going to answer it from the standpoint of water districts. Water districts essentially use combination rates. They charge a tax based on the size of the land, and then volumetrically, when they pump water to the residents, they pay a rate, and it's a time of year rate too. I mean, it's based on their wheeling and their not only the cost, but the associated costs with projects and groundwater recharge, et cetera. So essentially, water districts are already doing that option, and the experts can verify that or deny it in a few minutes here. I'll let them weigh in on that. But I was wondering why we could not provide multiple options. Even I don't know about doing it the first year, but I'm saying not only a volumetric rate or a hybrid rate of volumetric versus land quantity, or a combination of strictly volumetric rate. Why can't we offer options? And I like what Rob said earlier. I think that giving people options is really important. Essentially, what our job would be is to figure out whether those options make financial sense for the actual delivery of projects that mitigate the problem. And if we can determine that they do, then I say give them more options. And that's why I was concerned about allowing them to develop projects themselves. And I think that's awesome that we have considered that component in reducing the ultimate charge on for projects. Thank you.
All right. And then I had just a couple of questions, or I'd like to see some modeling on what it would look like on a farm unit for what it would cost. Just take a 100-acre, just to make it round numbers, for the fixed, and then what that same 100 acres would look like under the hybrid model. I just think that'd be important to see what it actually, because we just see a number here, but what does it actually do in terms of the overall cost for a farm? And then, do we have any idea? And I don't know, maybe Raph, tell us. Obviously, none of these have really gone through, if we're at the tip of the spear on it, but on what would have the most likelihood to pass, just from because this will need to go out as a Prop 218 as a new fee, correct? So
That is
it would
correct.
have to have a vote on it. So if one is doomed to fail, there's no point in going down that path. And then, because if one fails, then the next one will as well, even if it was the one that was more likely to pass. So I think that's. Do we have any idea of what has a higher likelihood to pass?
Well, I think after our virtual open house, we'll have a good sense. We've certainly heard, as Supervisor Poitras said, we've heard from growers who want a volumetric component.
Okay. And then for the next time it comes back, we'd have like that 100-acre kind of model, what it would look like for both. I think it's important.
Sure, we can do that.
Supervisor.
Yeah, great point, Brett. I think including all three components would be a great view. Strictly volumetric, hybrid, and strictly land.
Supervisor Poitras.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I can give you that number in regards to the first year, this year, if we had that set up. And it would be, and based on, is it 28.3 inches? It would be $177 an acre foot. So that would be this year. And then it would, if the fixed rate remained at 145, then it would actually go down somewhat over the years because of our, as we lower our transitional yield, so forth, the ability to pump. But yeah, year one would be $177.
And then also, I think it's an important note to make too, that when there is a volumetric component to it, the goal of this is to conserve the water that's in the ground. When there is a volumetric, it's just like anytime you put meters on at residential units, the water use goes down once they're having to pay for that volumetric amount of water that's coming out. So I think it does, it would help with some of the conservation aims and goals that we have. Any other questions before I go out to the public? All right. This is a public hearing. I'll now open the public hearing for any members of the public who wish to speak on this item. Seeing none, I'll call close to the public hearing.
I'm so sorry. It's Leticia. I put it in the chat. Would it be easier next time just to unmute myself instead of putting it in the chat?
I forgot to ask in Webland. Last time I was the chairman, it was 2019, back when everything was normal.
A little ago. Yeah, so I kind of, where do I start? So I feel like
Name. Start with your name.
Oh, right. Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I said it. Yeah, so Leticia, again, with Leadership Council. I just kind of want to emphasize that the issue here is ensuring that people continue to have access to potable running water. So I think in having these conversations, there must be a way to also incorporate this view in making decisions about whether to choose volumetric and per acre allocation rates. In these conversations, they seem really grower centered, which is important, but I think we also have to look at the other side of that. And residents fully support a volumetric allocation, as you all know, because it incentivizes those responsible for the overdraft to use less water and adding. They also want to add a cap to the amount of water being used to help prevent overpumping and to achieve sustainability by 2014 as required by SGMA. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Leticia. And a big portion of this, like for those domestic well mitigation programs, you know, those do get funded out of these discussions. So why it seems like it's grower centric is because that's who will be paying these rates. Is there any other public comment on this from the web? All right, seeing none, I'll call close to the public comment portion of the public hearing. And this was just a presentation and update.
That's right. We will be back in a month. Thank you for your feedback.
Great. Thank you.
Excellent presentation. Thank you to Stephanie and the experts. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Item 6C, Human Resources Department.
Good morning. Discussions, consideration of approval to set the salary range from systems engineer at range 303, $71,799 to $87,282 annually as recommended by the Civil Service Commission.
Good morning, members of the board. Alba Gomez with Human Resources. This item was presented to the commission as a request from IT to add a new classification for a systems engineer and a senior systems engineer, which you'll see in the next item. The commission reviewed the duties as presented by Human Resources in coordination with IT, and we are recommending that the board set the salary at range 303 as indicated in the item. Brian Brody is also here from IT to answer any questions the board may have.
I move to approve.
I'll second it, and I just want the public to know this is a brand new position. It's not bump ups or anything else for anybody else. It's a brand new position that we decided we really need in that department.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Oh, is there any public comment? Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Chairman Frazier?
Yes.
Chairman Frazier, thank you. 5-0.
All right. 6D.
Hello again, Alba Gomez with Human Resources. This item is also to present a new classification of the senior systems engineer for IT. This item will be in the series of the IT classification for senior systems. And again, we are recommending that the board set the range of 323 for the engineer classification, which is 79,330 to 96,427.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Any public comment? Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Chairman Frazier?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
And this
Thank
is
you.
another new position that's been created to help run our whole department.
A complex and changing department.
Yeah, for sure. By the minute.
Yeah.
And we'll go to lunch now. Just kidding. All right, 6E.
Discussion and consideration to adopt a resolution appointing David Ridgestone to the position of the Madera County Auditor Controller and administering the oath of office.
Good morning, Chairman and Board. Jay Varner from County Administration. As discussed at last week's meeting, your current elected auditor controller, Todd Miller, will be stepping down and retiring effective February 28th. Based on direction from the February 1st meeting, we have reached out to the current Chief Internal Auditor, David Ridgestone, regarding his desire to be appointed. He has advised that he is interested in being appointed. As you'll recall, there is a difference between this process and the process we use to give additional job duties to Brian Glover in the assessor's office in a similar circumstance. So what we're requesting today is that that you adopt a resolution appointing David Ridgestone to the position. If you do so, I think we all remember what we had to go through to be sworn in. Most of us did too. We did one over in the clerk recorder's office and one in here. However, this is a little bit of a unique and in some ways a good circumstance. The audit controller's position is approved to do the official swearing in. So in consultation with Rebecca Martinez, the clerk recorder and person over elections, we've determined that Todd can do it once for all, and the paperwork is set up for that to be done right here today. And should the board take this action to approve that resolution, then if the board would like, we can have Mr. Ridgestone come back on March 1st and we can do maybe some type of meet and greet as the board wishes, then when he has officially taken. So I'm available for any questions.
I hear a cake.
I'm going to move to approve the resolution.
I second it, and I think that'd be great, Jay, if we could do that first meeting in March and welcome our new auditor. So,
Is there any public comment? Seeing none, roll call.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
yes.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Chairman Frazier?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Congratulations.
So board at this head will have them come forward and swear David in.
Now, you do understand that once you get sworn in, you get sworn at.
Ha! Goes with the territory.
Tom, I'll take a picture for you from the dais.
Thank you.
And thank you, Becky, for having that readily available for Todd, the administration of the oath.
Good morning, Supervisors. I'm Todd Miller, and I will administer the oath of office to David Ridgestone. Thank you for selecting him. I think he's made a good decision. All righty. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, David Ridgestone, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. Mental or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Thank you. Good memory.
Yeah. we usually break it up a little bit more than that.
Yeah, no kidding.
I was just going to read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Board.
David, if you'd like to say a few words?
Well, I just want to thank Todd Miller very much for recommending me to complete the rest of his term, and also thank the board for showing confidence in me to be able to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for taking it with no mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Yes.
Congratulations, David. Congratulations. Great.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Welcome aboard. The fun begins.
Very important position.
All right, we'll move on to pending legislation, 8A, County Administration.
Discussion and consideration to authorize a letter of support for Assembly Bill 1154, which expedites fire safety improvements for subdivisions that are a significant fire risk and lack a second egress route.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is being sponsored by Assemblymember Patterson and is designed to push money into developing secondary egress routes from, in our case, many of our mountain communities, some of which do not have even a moderately improved secondary access or egress route. So that's the purpose of forwarding this letter for your approval today. It's support the legislation.
Move to approve.
So everybody knows this is really important, especially up here. We have, in the old days, before the state finally made a rule that they had to have two routes in and out of any kind of partial split, we've got a lot of dead-end roads, and we've been working on some of these for years, and this hopefully will get us some financing. So some of these we got to buy right away. So really, did you make a motion, Letty?
Yes, I did.
I'll second it, and thank you so much.
Is there any public comment? Is there any public? Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Chairman Frazier?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
And I just want to thank Jay and his staff for the backup. That was very informative information, so I appreciate that.
All right. 9A, Board of Supervisors Department.
Discussion and authorization to send a letter to the California Department of Managed Healthcare regarding the selection decision for the Madera County Managed Care Plan Healthcare Delivery Partners.
So this is something that was brought forward to me. It just allows for competition, having more options. As we all know, competition a lot of times helps drive down costs. So
Apparently, the state doesn't understand that because they just made a deal with Kaiser Permanente for Medicare that was never discussed by a single legislator, to my knowledge. not a single lawmaker.
Yeah.
So they need to be reminded.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'll move to approve.
And I need a second.
Second?
And I have a second. Any public comment? Roll call vote.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Chairman Frazier?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
All right. And supervisor and staff reports. I'll start in Webland. Supervisor Rogers.
I have nothing to report, sir.
Thank you. Supervisor Wheeler.
Yeah, I had nothing except my operation got canceled for 2 to 6 weeks, so
Oh,
came down with COVID, so
we'll keep you in our prayers. You're looking good.
thank you.
Supervisor Gonzalez.
I just want to say that it's Super Bowl weekend and Valentine's weekend this weekend, so I want to wish everyone a safe and healthy. Stay safe, spread love, not COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, good idea.
And get an Uber. Supervisor Poitras.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last Friday, we had a meeting of the Finish the 99 Coalition, members of Tulare, Merced County, and Madera County met here in Madera to talk about continued efforts and steps to finish 99. We also talked quite a bit about the SR 99 Summit coming up on March 3rd and 4th. And I just want to mention, we just got the invite, was sent out yesterday, and so we've got included speakers include Congressman Costa, Senator Hurtado, CTC Chairperson Leanne Eager, and yours truly, which proves that if you make a big enough nuisance of yourself, they'll add you as a speaker. So definitely looking forward to that. And I need to make sure that and they talk about a robust discussion, so I can promise them that. And, but I do need some talking points so I can stay somewhat close to script.
Should we call you Gavin Nuisance now?
There you go. Thank you.
Please continue that, Supervisor, please.
All right, thank you.
CAO.
Yeah.
Nothing additional to report, Chairman.
County Council.
Nothing additional to report. Thank you.
Thank you for sitting in, Scott.
Thank you.
Nothing to report, thank you.
And this week I've got the EDC meeting, and then next week I've got my coffee and conversation, as well as the Workforce Development Board. And that.
Oh, can I get one more, buddy?
Tom. Yeah, of course.
I forgot we had our first town hall of the year on public safety, and I want to thank all the staff members and all the different departments that spoke. We had a great turnout, over 30 people, and it was lots of great discussion, lots of good information that a lot of people commented on, so it was really great. So thank Bobby McCauley for putting that together for me, and it was our next one is March the 7th, I believe. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting.
Good
Bye,
job.
everybody.
Good job.
Get well, man. Get well.
Yep. You too, buddy.
Thanks, man.
For the invite, Tom.